Yo, hey, what's going on everybody? Alex with you here again as usual. Thanks for dropping by for yet another chess video. It's always great to see you guys. So I spent some of this morning trying to collect a bunch of different chessboards that I had laying around the house, underneath the bed, in closets. So I have before me like, I think 9 or 10 different chessboards. Part of the reason why I decided to make this video is I've had one of my good subscribers and good friends actually recently commented on, I believe, the last video. By the way, thank you so much for watching my recent video on my review of the How to Win at Chess by Levi Rossman. It took me a while to read the book and I really put in the time to try to make that review very comprehensive as best as I could. So once again, thank you so much. But one of the people commented on that video. He was looking to see if I could recommend maybe a particular board size or a particular size of a chess set that would be best suited for like an analysis type of chess set. And I know I briefly touched base with regards to different sizes with regards to chess pieces, and maybe at some point I've also touched base on sizes of the boards and how they're different. But at that time when I did that video, I didn't really have as many chessboards, so now I have a lot more chessboards and I have a lot more stuff to talk about. So hopefully this video is going to be informative to people not only looking for analysis chess sets, but also I'm going to basically take out my little tape measure right over here, and we're going to measure all these different boards from edge to edge to kind of give you an idea as far as how much each individual board occupies, and also furthermore, to give you an idea as how each individual board will feel when you're playing on the board, and what I think each one of those boards of different sizes is best suited for. Okay, so I've got a whole lot of different boards as you can see here. I've taken out different ones, different sizes. We're going to be measuring all of them here. In fact, underneath that black board right over here, there's another board that's about the same size. Those two boards on the very edge are the 2.25 inch squares, and I think following by these are 2.5 inch squares. I think this one's 2.25, and then moving forward they do get a little bit smaller. And then I even brought out a folding board right over here, and also a little travel chess set that I feel like is also going to sort of help to explain some of the differences in chess sizes and what I feel like is best suited for which situation. So although I'm going to be trying to answer the question for this particular gentleman with regards to what I feel like is best size for an analysis board, I'm just going to be briefly talking about all of these and kind of giving you guys an idea as far as like what size is what. So, and we'll start off with this particular board. I want to show you guys this board right over here. So this here is, I believe, standard 2.25 inch. Yeah, so this is standard 2.25 square inch. So this particular folding board that I've done a review on a long time ago is actually going to be your standard tournament size. It is a folding board, okay, that once it's folded will occupy, it's a 10.5 inches in width once it's folded, by approximately 22 and a quarter inch. So one of the things that I would recommend is as far as if you're looking for a particular like specific situation, to like you say, okay, I have this table, a computer table or whatever, and I need to get a board. Get yourself one of these tape measures and measure the space that you have available. That way you'll get a better idea as far as what's the board that you can fit in there, and you know, then you can at least go from there. Because if your space that you're trying to get a board for is 14 inches, you know you can't get a 21.5 such as this, because it will not fit. So yeah, so this is 21 and a quarter approximately. Now another thing that I want to talk about with regards to chessboards is the border. In some chessboards there is very little border, and then in some other ones like this one, for example, you see right over here the border is a lot bigger. You see a chess board like this looks very aesthetic when the border is a little bit thicker, but it does occupy a little bit more space. As we'll see here shortly, this board, which is the board that came with the World Chess Championship chess set that I reviewed at some point. It's a really nice aesthetic board, looks very good. But this board here measures at almost, it's like 19.75. This one measures as at 21.25. So there's not that much difference. There's just like barely, maybe an inch and a half or something like that. But the square size here, because the border is a lot thicker, here it's 2.25, and then here it's 2. So we're seeing that we have smaller squares. Now 2.25 is a standard, what we're all used to as far as tournaments. So whether it's a roll-up board or it's a regular board like this, you would expect this particular square size to be the standard size for most tournaments. This is what a lot of people are used to. That's not to say that that's the most ideal, but it does provide you enough sort of space to play on. With pieces of relatively large size, I would say 3.75 is a good standard chess set to have on a 2.25 chessboard like this. The pieces will probably feel right at home if they're about 3.75. Now, this board is pretty big. I would not call this board an analysis board by any means, even though it does fold. So you could argue and say, well, this board folds, so I can take this with me and analyze my games. But usually when it's analysis time, you do want your board to be constantly open and the pieces be always on it. At least that's my opinion. Another thing with regards to analysis boards is some people like to have notation. Some people argue and say, well, notation is just for people that, you know, may not be used to recognizing what is each piece called and they need that extra help. But I firmly believe if you're going to have an analysis board, notation is key to have on the board. And if your particular board doesn't have notation, I would recommend either buying little stickies somewhere online that you could probably get, like little clear stickies or something, and just putting your own notation on the side of the board if you're going to have it as an analysis board. I would strongly recommend that. It just makes things easier. So this particular board, like I said, it's a tournament size board. Yes, it folds and occupies less space, but as far as analysis, I wouldn't necessarily use it as an analysis. This is a board that I would take to tournaments. This is a board that I would feel safe taking to tournaments with me. As long as you have the carrying case that you can have to carry this around, this would be a board I would take. Or take a roll-up board. So underneath here, we have a slightly smaller board, very aesthetic by all means. It's a very nice board. Like I said before, this came with the World Chess Championship chess set. I would not call this an analysis board. I feel like the squares are a bit too big. Now again, this is all my opinion. I feel like the squares being at 2 inches are still a bit too big for an analysis purpose. I would say that if you wanted something at home where it's almost like tournament size, but you want something to be like more of like less tournament and more home casual play, this is a good square size. Pieces for this particular board, I've reviewed those before. Those are the World Chess Championship chess set that I've reviewed a while back. The pieces on this board look really nice, but you can use any other pieces. The board itself, like I said, looks really, really nice. You notice there's no notation on this particular board. I feel like also aesthetically, the fact that it has these large borders here also sort of emphasizes the playing field a little bit better and just gives an overall nicely bordered board. It just looks nice overall. It's a bit too big in my opinion for an analysis. So let's just move on to another board. These two boards right over here are pretty big. They're 2.5, I believe both of them are 2.5. Let me just double check that. Yeah, these are 2.5 square here. In fact, I think this board, which is the Elm Burl Bird's Eye Maple Superior Traditional Veneer chessboard that I've had for more than 3 years now. It's a wonderful board with a really nice smooth surface to it. It's very nice to play games on this at home. It's kind of a more like luxury board, and the pieces on this board looks really, really nice in my opinion. Everything looks clean, everything plays well. The nice contrast between the pieces that you see right over here, it gives a nice clean board look. You don't get confused when you're playing games. I've always loved this board, and I love this board to this day. However, being that it's a 2.5, and you can actually see that both of these boards measure almost the same, but if we measure the size of this board, it measures at 23 and 3/4 approximately, almost 24 inches. That's huge. Not only is it huge for you to put somewhere as an analysis board, which I would never recommend, it's too big, unless you have enough space, It's also really hard to carry this around because there's not that many bags out there that will support large boards like this. I'm not even talking about 3-inch square boards. Those are huge. I don't even have one to show you, unfortunately. I've never invested into one, but take my word for it. 2.5, in my opinion, is like the largest that I would ever go. I probably wouldn't go to 3-inch squares. That's massive, okay? Same here. If we measure the size of this, we're coming in right at 23 3/4, almost 24 inches. These are big. They're kind of hard to carry. They're even hard to store. Usually I put these underneath the bed somewhere safe where nobody can get to them. But even finding space for them sometimes is a bit tricky. They're wonderful boards to play. They're definitely a little bit bigger than what you would expect tournament size. You do have a lot more of real estate on these, and you can play some really nice games. Usually when my friend Larry comes over, I take out this board just because I love the way that all chess pieces look on this, whether it's like wooden or like ebony wood or golden rose wood. Everything kind of fits well on this. I think it's because this color is almost like close to orangish, and so you have pretty much most of the pieces, whether it's blood rosewood, golden rosewood, walnut, anything will look really nice on this board. This is kind of a little bit different because we see that the squares are different sort of style, but this might suit some people who want an alternative look, sort of that prestige look. It still plays well. I don't play with this board as much, but like I said, it is a little bit more unique. I want to go ahead and proceed from here to show you guys other boards that are going to be a little bit smaller. Just for comparison purposes, I'm going to go ahead and leave this huge board here, and we'll go ahead and jump into slightly smaller board. This is the DGT electronic board. So this particular board is quite a bit smaller. Still, it's probably too big for analysis purposes. So 21 inches is the measurement of the board. This board has notation, which is nice. So this is kind of geared more towards analysis, even though it's a little bit too big for analysis, but you could still be used for analysis, especially considering that this is an electronic board. You can connect it to like a Fritz, or you can connect it to different kinds of software, and you can use it for that purpose to analyze your game. So it's still big, in my opinion. The square size here is 2.25. So this square size right at tournament size. So this is a nice board. If you need an analysis board, I would say this is a bit too big. But it's still a really nice board, and I really like the fact that they've included the notations. All right, moving forward, this board here belonged to the Library Grandmaster chess set. This is going to be sort of a direct response for the individual who wanted me to kind of give him an idea as far as whether I think that this particular board would suit analysis purposes better. So it measures slightly smaller than the previous board, and we're looking at 17 1/4, so 17.25 approximately, somewhere in that range. And the square size is, I think it's 1.75. Yeah, it's like 1.75 more or less. You got great big notation here, and the borders are not super large, so even though the board is smaller, the pieces are, well, they're smaller proportionately, but you know, had this borders been a lot bigger, the pieces would have had to suffer size and then been even smaller. So if you're cramped for space, maybe look for a board where the borders are a little bit smaller, so that way they don't occupy as much space. Because if, for example, the borders were missing completely, that board would have measured at, say that we would have probably been at like 14.5, maybe 14.5 inches, which is good for analysis purposes. But because we got all this extra space, all of a sudden, for people that are cramped for space and want something to fit on their computer desk, this might be a little too big. It might be a little too big. I've played games, casual games on this. I find that playing casual games on this is a bit small. I would definitely enjoy much better playing casual games on this size as opposed to this size. It might have something to do not only with the size, but the coloration. As you can see, the colors here are a little bit more subtle, but you can still have a nice contrast between light and dark. Here, the contrast is very striking. And when I reviewed this originally, the pieces themselves, which I'm not showing at this time, but you're more than free to go and watch that video. I believe it was like one of my first videos. The colors, especially the dark colors, they would blend in too much with the squares. And then what I found is when I'm having a complicated position, if I'm playing against somebody, the problem is sometimes the colors blend in too much, and then you're having a hard time sort of visualizing the board. I feel like when you have more subtle colors like these, and then you have more contrasty colors of the pieces like dark and white, it's easier not to miss like bishops hidden in the corners and stuff like that. Now, I just, that's my opinion. Like I said, some people might have different opinions, but if this particular board would be a little bit smaller, and maybe it wouldn't be as sort of striking contrast here, maybe they would use a different wood, I would say that it might have been a good analysis board size, but I still think that this is a bit too big for analysis purposes. Now, moving on, I have this smaller board. This board I believe I've reviewed this board at some point. It's one of the European type of boards where the pieces are usually put inside like this, into this sort of a soft material here, and then you just keep the pieces in there, and you may keep a board like this folded in such a way that you can have it at your computer desk. When you're not analyzing your games, you could always, you know, just keep it like this. Size-wise, when it's folded, it measures at 8 inches by 16 approximately. So whether the previous Grandmaster was at 17.25, this is at 16, so this is going to be slightly smaller. When we unfold it, you could see it's just slightly smaller. Now we're slowly starting to get into the territory of analysis, like what I feel would be a good analysis board. Okay, so the squares here are going to be a bit smaller, so I think that they're like, yeah, the squares are about 1.5 instead of 1.75. You have a lot of extra stuff here. If we're saving on space, like I said, it's always good to have borders that are a little bit, you know, a little bit smaller. Have the borders be like small, and then you'll be fine. And also, one of the things I wouldn't like about this particular design of a board like this is because there's like too much detail on this board, like all these carvings and all these little tiny nuances. It looks beautiful, it looks very aesthetic, but as far as an analysis board, I would say, I don't know. And then you're kind of confused by all this color alteration, because you've got this sort of color alteration. Your board ends here effectively in the corner, but then further down you have this additional little zigzag little thing here that kind of tends to confuse people, because you think that it actually ends here and this is just a continuation of the board somehow. So I don't know, I think when the board ends, it should end. It shouldn't continue doing this kind of stuff like we see here. Another thing is the dark and light here also is, in my opinion, it's sort of a little bit, could get a little confusing for the eyes, could get a little taxing. We see the difference between this being darker and this being super dark. I probably say if you're looking for a nice board where it's going to be visually aesthetic, appealing, easy to see, maybe strive to find something that's going to be a little bit like this. So we've seen boards that are relatively big. Once again, 20.5 to 17.25. Now we're moving to 16. Moving on, I think that like something like this, for example, this is going to be a much smaller board that you can see. They're definitely smaller, but the square size is still relatively large. It's if you compare the square sizes of this to this, you could see that these squares are not super like a lot smaller. They're somewhat smaller, but they're not as small, because the borders here on the Chestnut Air are smaller. So you've got your notation really nicely written. You've got the borders, but they're not taking up like half of the size. So even though the board itself, the Chestnut Air, measures at, I believe, like 13 inches by 13, yeah, by 13. Now we're starting to get into more of an analysis size. This would probably be like 12, somewhere between 12 and 14, in my opinion, would work really well for anybody that's looking for an analysis size board. Now, before I finish this video, I'm going to talk about additional very important characteristics. So stay tuned. If you're looking for an analysis board, there's going to be some stuff I want to cover. But with regards to Chestnut, that's why I feel like Chestnut's been so popular, that you are combining sort of a really good size with the features that you can play this online, and then you can, you know, there's a lot of good things about the Chestnut Air, just because it's compact, but at the same time the pieces are big. I'll show you. So what did we measure this at? 1.5, and then here it's measuring at it's not 1.5, but we're measuring at approximately, you know, almost 1.5. It's like almost 1.5. It's not 1.5, but you would think that these look a lot bigger, but these actually measure close. I think the reason why these squares look bigger is that you've got all these thick lines in between that we're also sort of measuring. And the thick lines give the illusion that these squares are actually bigger than they are. So these squares here, you know, there's no delineation as what we see here, but there's just an immediate sort of combination here. They are pretty big, okay? Size of the pieces is really good for analysis purposes as well. You don't want to get a board that's really small, because then the pieces get too small, and then it would be hard for you to move around without bumping your fingers and hands into the other pieces. You don't want to have a board where you're trying to desperately move the piece without it, you know, running into other things. You want to be able to have an analysis board where you can freely move the pieces around, change the position of the pieces, and still have, you know, a compact size. So moving forward, lastly, I had a couple of other boards. I just couldn't find them, but I have this little guy right over here. This is the travel chess set. I don't have the pieces inside here, but it was in one of the videos that I showed before. And this is sort of a wooden little chess board that opens up like this. And I believe this particular little chess set with the borders measures at like 7.5 approximately. That's way too small for analysis. This might be okay for traveling, but for analysis, especially like when I reviewed this, I mentioned that the borders of the chessboard here are so close to these walls that when you're moving your pieces, sometimes if your fingers are a bit big, or there's this problem where your own fingers will run into the borders of the board, and it may be hard for you to pick up a piece and move it. But one of the things that I liked about this particular travel chess set is the fact that the pieces were magnetically attracted to the board. I think the board itself had some kind of an underlying metal part to it, or a magnet or something, and so the pieces were able to stay where they are, which is a very important consideration for if you're choosing an analysis board, because sometimes when we want to analyze a position, we may want to pick up the board like this, or pick it up at a different angle, or maybe just pick up the whole board and move it to a different location. Share it with a friend. Hey, what do you think about this particular position? Do you think it's worthwhile, or do you think I should have moved the pawn? You know, to be able to just like put the chessboard at an angle like that and show to somebody is something that might be important consideration for some of you guys looking for an analysis board, just because that way you don't ever run the risk of, like on this little board, you always run the risk of running into other pieces. And this, in my opinion, is way too small even for a travel chess set. But it is one I got on sale, I think, so I have the pieces somewhere, but I don't have them right now. Okay, yes, so to summarize what we've been talking about right now, I know I threw a lot at you, but if you're looking to get a really big board, then consider probably going no further than 2.5. That's just my opinion. You can always go out and purchase a 3-inch square board, but in my opinion, I think even a 2.5 is a bit much. I could do away with playing on something smaller. In fact, the DGT electronic chessboard that we see right over here has really nice characteristics to it in many different respects. With regards to, first of all, now this is not a wooden board, it's like a plastic board, but there's just a lot of things that are going for this board as far as the positives. It doesn't have a very big border. The border itself doesn't distract us. There's really a nice, subtle notation that's present on all sides. The notation is also not very distracting. It's made with the same color as the light square pieces. The square size, I believe it's 2.25. The board itself is a decent size. This would probably be the type of board that I would definitely strive for as far as what I think is a good ideal board to play regular games on, like regular tournament games or even playing games at home. Now, even playing games at home, you might have different situations where you might have smaller tables or you're just looking to get a smaller board. I would then say that the smaller one that we've seen, the smaller one that I have, well, we have a couple, okay? We have, this is very nice. It's a little bit darker squares, but if you choose to have pieces that came with it, for example, the World Chess Championship home chess set, I did a video of this, you may be able to find it on my channel, but the pieces that came here were ebonized boxwood and regular boxwood, and even though the squares that we see here are kind of on the dark side, the pieces still looked really well and fitted well on this particular board. And because we were having black pieces with these sort of dark brown squares, we didn't have too much of a blending in, so that was good. So this is another good excellent size for like a home playing situation. You could take this somewhere to a tournament. You would probably need to have a nice carrying case for something like this. It'd be a shame if you know, another thing, if you take something like this to a tournament that does not have notation, so I don't know if notation is expected at tournaments on boards, you know, you may not want to risk it, but you could still take this out somewhere. I would personally keep something like this at home. Plays well, looks nice. Moving further, certainly the Library Grandmaster chess set, as the name goes, would probably be a chess set that, well, you could take this to a library and play it in the library. You can leave it at the library as well, if you know, or it's a good sort of a semi-compact size to where you could argue that this still kind of allows you to play games on this. Relatively good games. I just wish the colors was a little bit different, and you can get different colors. In my opinion, if I had to buy another one of these boards, I'd probably buy something with slightly more like more bland colors, so that way the pieces just would look better. And I might still do that in the future, but this particular board, like I said, the only thing I don't like about it is just the harshness of the contrast between the squares. Kind of makes it a little bit tiring on the eyes, especially if you're playing a lot of games, okay? So yeah, 2.5, a little bit too big. Good size would be that DGT, in my opinion, to play at home. Analysis wise, I would probably honestly recommend something about the size of the Chestnut Air. Chestnut Air, out of all the different boards, would have approximately the size that I would stick to with regards to analysis size. The nice thing about a Chestnut Air is, as far as the size of it, it's a good size board. It fits really well. It actually fits on my bookshelf and I don't ever have to take it out. And my bookshelf is right about the same width as the width of this board. It would probably fit somewhere on like your table somewhere on the computer or something like that. And of course there's the option of being able to not only analyze your games, but you can record your games. You can do a whole bunch of stuff that you might not be able to do with just a regular board. The notation feature on the side of the board is really something that I like. Just like on the DGT electronic board, it's really nice to have nice clear notation on all sides. Like I said, if you're using a board for an analysis purposes, notation is something that's good. Now, another key feature that I wanted to talk about is sometimes boards that are being sold as analysis boards could also be boards that are travel boards. So travel and analysis may be a category that either parallels each other or runs closely to it. You want a chess set that's going to be sort of a travel chess set that you can take with you. So this is an exception. I think this is too small. It's just a little bit too weird in my opinion. It's a nice idea, but it's a bit too small. You can get similar designs, but bigger sizes, so that might be an option, but I just don't like the idea of having these walls coming up on the sides, because sometimes I feel like you just don't have enough space to pick up your pieces, and everything just kind of feels like there's a chess game going on in this weird looking valley over here. But I think you can get this particular design in like 12 inch, so 12 inch is probably where you're going to be reaching more towards analysis size. 8 inch is one that I've frequently seen online as being sort of sold as and advertised as a traveling chess set, but could theoretically be used as an analysis. I think 8" is a bit too small for analysis purposes. This is almost 8". So just imagine this being slightly bigger. Pieces are terribly small. Analysis purposes, this is great for if you're like analyzing games on the go, like you're in a subway somewhere and you've got a long time to go. You could take something like this out and just move your pieces and look kind of weird doing it. You might want to analyze your games on your phone if you do that, but either way, yeah, analysis board size, I'd probably stick to something between 12 to 14, in all honesty. 16 would be going a bit too far. Why am I going through all this? In fact, I'll tell you why. Because I've just recently finished Levy's book, and I promised you guys that I'm going to now start going through this book. So that's my next go-to. That's what I'm going to be doing. And I want to go through this book. Now, I wanted to have a chess set that I could take out and put on my lap. I wanted to have a chess set that I could just put on my lap, read the book, and have it on my lap. Perfect, perfect. So you guys see my lap right over here. So here I got my book, okay? Here I got my book, and I would like to have the book in one hand maybe, and I want a chess set on my lap. So I was looking online to see if I could myself get an analysis chess set. That's one of the things I was doing recently. And Chess House had a couple of really nice chess sets that I was like looking forward to. Maybe getting something, I was looking for something magnetic. Why? Because when you're sitting with some kind of a chess set on your lap, this would be way too big. My lap it's too much. And getting a folded board like this, well, it's an option, but I don't think it's got this wiggle to it right here because of the bend. Pieces would start falling. If it's not magnetic, you can't have it on your lap like this because you might be moving around and then the pieces would move around. It's just not the answer. So I was looking for something that would be magnetic, and I looked around at different websites. I looked at House of Staunton, I looked at Chess House, I looked at Chess USA. A lot of stuff that I kind of liked was sold out, probably because of the holidays that just recently passed through. And so I was looking for specific things. First of all, I wanted a board that would be small size. And I myself didn't really have a clear idea of how small I wanted to be. So I did this. I started measuring. I measured how big my lap is. And so on a normal situation where you're sitting relaxed, no more than 16 inches. And 16 would probably be pushing it, to be honest with you. In fact, this way, I probably say no more than 12. 12, 14, if you're passing at 16, suddenly you've got a board that's hanging out. So for me, for my particular situation, I was looking at somewhere between like 12 to 14. I was looking at a chess set that would be 12 to 14 magnetic, easy to store, of course easy to take out the pieces and you know, that kind of thing. The problem with smaller chess sets sometimes is the pieces themselves will start to kind of be not so good quality. So that was another thing that I ran into. The smaller the chess set, the crummier the pieces would be. Like the design of the pieces would start to really suffer. If you don't take my word for it, watch this review on this particular little travel chess set that I've did like 2 years ago or something. The quality of the pieces was just, it was not that good. It was not a good analysis. Like the pawns looked almost the same as bishops, and the bishops looked about the same as the king, and all the pieces looked very squatty and small, and it was just kind of, it was hard. It was hard. Now, the Library Grandmaster chess pieces were a bit bigger and a little bit closer to what you'd expect for like a regular game, but the chessboard and the pieces were still a bit smaller than what I would recommend for a regular game. If you want a regular game, stick to pieces that are going to be a little bit bigger, 3.75. Once again, the example with the DGT electronic chessboard, that's a good size for a regular game. Skip the stuff in between, that's my opinion. Don't try to get something in between, and go directly to something about the size of the chestnut. So that is something that I noticed, like if I put the chestnut here on my lap, it's easy to see that compared to some of the other boards, I have enough room to where I could sit there, analyze. Even if I don't have this turned on or connected to anything, just being able to say, okay, so this one here begins with D4, so he goes with F6. Once again, it's really nice to have the notation. If I'm confused about a specific position, I can always refer to the notation. He goes to C4, you know, and here we go. I've got a nice setup, at least for me. Now, other people might want to have their analysis board on the table, something like that. It just depends on, you know, what your situation is. But like I said, if you're cramped for space and you want to have like a compact, sort of a compact design, look for something about the size of the Chestnut Air. I recently purchased a board, like a travel board from the World Chess Championship, the company that that we've seen, the World Chess Championship chess set. I'll actually leave you guys a link below at the very bottom. Look for that link. I bought it and I'll probably be receiving it sometime either at the end of this week or maybe at next week sometime. And most likely I'll be doing the review of that chess set next. So that particular chess set, I believe, is either 12 or 14. It's right around the size of what I was looking for. One of the really nice things about that particular chess set, at least from the online description of it, the pieces, even though they're smaller pieces, because it's considered like a travel/analysis chess set, the pieces themselves are like really nicely carved out and they look really good. There's a lot of detail, so that the piece quality doesn't suffer because of the size of the board. It's magnetic. I'm not sure how good the magnetic pull is, but that is one of the things I was looking for. It doesn't have notation, and maybe there was a board that I just overlooked that might have had similar features there, but I bought the one without the notation, and I think that if I start doing a lot of analysis work, I'm going to be fine without notation. But once again, I think there might be some areas online that you can probably purchase little stickies with the notation that you need, and you can probably get them in all kinds of different designs. I'm sure you can. I guess you can write it. I've seen somebody that just used little sticky notes and they wrote the numbers and then taped it. It doesn't look really nice, but it serves the purpose. But I would probably say online, and if I find a good place where you can buy something like that, I'll let you guys know. So that's about all for this video. I didn't want to like drag this video out way too long, but I still wanted to make it sort of informative for people out there that are still sort of concerned or are looking for different chess sizes. There's a lot of different chess size boards, and I feel like different chess size boards will meet different chess needs, different situations. And like I said, if you're considering getting an analysis chessboard, it might be a good idea to consider getting a magnetic one. It's not an absolute necessity. If you have not had a chance to test out or see the Chestnut Air, like I said, would be a pretty good size for analysis reasons and for regular play as well, but very, very nice for analysis purposes as far as the size. So yeah, that's about all I want to share with you guys today. Hopefully you found this video somewhat interesting. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Also, to respond to one of the other comments, the Susan Polgar's book that somebody recommended from the previous video, I have actually purchased it. So I'll be getting that probably either by the end of this week or next week, and I'll start looking at it and start seeing what it's all about. I won't really do a review of that book until I finish it. I want to start reviewing some chess books, but I want to do it in such a way that I finish the book first, just like I did with the Levy's book, and then I do the review. So hopefully I'll find that book interesting and informative and educational. Anyways, hopefully you guys have a good remainder of the week. Stay safe, stay healthy, play more chess, and I'll see you guys in the next video, okay? Bye-bye.